Did you know that the Mongolian Empire, the largest contiguous land empire in history, was on the verge of overrunning all of Europe? At their peak, Mongol horsemen were raiding the outskirts of Vienna. So, what stopped them from conquering the entire continent? This question has baffled historians for centuries, and today we're going to unravel the mystery. The Mongolian Empire, forged by the legendary Genghis Khan in the early 13th century, was an unstoppable force. Their military tactics, discipline, and sheer numbers were unlike anything the world had ever seen. After conquering vast swaths of Asia and the Middle East, their eyes turned westward toward the fragmented and feuding kingdoms of Europe. They seemed destined to succeed, but history, as we know, took a different turn. So, what exactly stood in their way? It wasn't just one single thing, but a perfect storm of challenges. First, let's talk geography and logistics. Europe is a continent of dense forests, wide rivers, and mountain ranges like the Carpathians and the Alps. This terrain was a nightmare for the Mongols' primary military advantage, their cavalry. Their swift, open plains tactics that worked so well in the steppes of Asia were much less effective in the woodlands of Poland and Hungary. The further west they pushed, the harder it became to find adequate grazing land for their massive herds of horses, which were the lifeblood of their army. A Mongol warrior might have several horses, and an army of tens of thousands needed immense pasture land just to sustain itself. The agricultural landscape of Europe simply couldn't support them in the same way. Add to this the notoriously wet and cold European climate, which was harsh on both the Mongol warriors and their animals, who were accustomed to the drier climate of the steppes. Their famous composite bows, held together with animal glue, were also susceptible to moisture, losing their effectiveness in the damp European weather. Logistically, supplying an army so far from their homeland in Karakoram was a monumental task. The supply lines stretched thousands of miles across hostile territory, making them vulnerable and incredibly difficult to maintain. Now, let's look at the political landscape. While we often think of medieval Europe as chaotic, this very fragmentation might have inadvertently saved it. Unlike the centralized empires of China or Persia that the Mongols had toppled, Europe was a patchwork of smaller kingdoms, duchies, and city-states. They were masters of siege warfare, often using captured engineers, but laying siege to hundreds of castles one by one would have been a grueling and resource-draining campaign. Furthermore, while European kingdoms were often at war with each other, the Mongol threat was so existential that it had the potential to unite them. The Pope called for crusades against the invaders, and for a brief moment, the squabbling nobles of Europe considered putting aside their differences to face a common enemy. And German army at the Battle of Legnica and annihilated the Hungarian army at the Battle of Mohi. The path into the heart of Europe, Austria, Italy, and Germany lay wide open. Vienna was in a state of panic. And then suddenly the Mongols turned back. Why? News had arrived from the distant capital of Karakoram. The great Khan, Gudai, son of Genghis, was dead. According to Mongol law, all princes of the royal bloodline had to return to the capital to elect a new great Khan. This shattered the myth of Mongol invincibility and halted their advance into North Africa. It proved that a well-prepared, determined force could stand against them. This victory sent shockwaves across the world and likely emboldened European resistance, showing them that the Mongols were not supernatural demons, but men who could be beaten. The combination of these internal power struggles and external defeats meant that a coordinated, massive invasion of Western Europe never materialized again. So, to sum it all up, the Mongol conquest of Europe was thwarted not by a single wall or one heroic battle, but by a complex web of factors. The challenging European geography, with its forests and mountains, neutralized their cavalry advantage. The logistical nightmare of supplying an army thousands of miles from home was immense. Europe's political fragmentation, paradoxically, made it a harder target to subdue than a single unified empire. But most critically, the internal politics of the Mongol Empire itself, particularly the death of Genghis Khan in 1241 and the subsequent civil wars, pulled their attention and resources away at the most crucial moment. The Mongols were an unstoppable force that, in the end, was stopped primarily by themselves and the tyranny of distance. The dream of a Mongol-controlled Europe remained just that, a dream, a fascinating what-if of history. What do you think was the biggest reason the Mongols failed to conquer Europe? Could anything have changed the outcome? Let me know your theories down in the comments below. And if you found this interesting, be sure to check out our other video on the lasting legacy of the Mongolian Empire. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest stories. See you next time.